All right, can you guys hear me? Can you indicate in the chat section? We're trying to do something different here. The chat is open. Just indicate in the chat section if you can hear me. Type a one for me in the chat if you can hear me, so we can get started. We've got quite a lot of information to share. As long as you raise the hand. Are you not able to type in the chat? I'm not sure if the raising of the hand means that you can. Can you try type it in the chat? Is that even possible? Okay, great stuff. Great stuff. I hear it's working. All right, so let's do this. Just one more second, guys. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I think the chat should be open. But I see it seems like messages are only going to it seems like it's only the Q&A. So trying to do a webinar here instead of meetings, and let's see how it goes. So anyway, let's get started. Just a second, guys. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday afternoon or evening. I certainly am. So let's get started. So let me share my, let me. All right. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome for this session. Our webinar tonight, we are talking about the Web3 Masterclass, right? So we're gonna talk about the evolution of the web from Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. But most importantly, the reason why we're doing this exercise is to actually talk about the opportunities that existed in Web 1, existed in Web 2, are existing in Web 3, right? We're going to talk about those opportunities so that, hopefully one can be able to spot something that they can participate in that can help them to better their lives, right? So, now, if we look throughout, civilization, there's one thing that was able to make one civilization to actually evolve faster or move faster or develop faster than other forms of civilization, and that is their ability to actually transfer knowledge. If you were to take one single invention in the history of mankind that we can say had a profound effect in actually helping mankind to leapfrog in terms of development, from us living in caves to where now we're flying all over the world. People are building, skyscrapers inside the middle of the ocean. We are building man-made islands and so forth. What could be the one thing? You can put this in the comment section or in the Q&A section. What do you think is the one biggest invention of mankind that propelled mankind more than any other invention that we've seen in the past? let's see if you can comment. What do you think is this biggest invention? There's been quite a few, but I'm looking for this particular one. What do you think is the biggest invention that has actually helped um, to move mankind? I'm really going to appreciate, guys, if we can make this interactive. What do you think is the biggest invention that helped mankind to move forward in terms of, the development and so forth? Anyone, good people? I was thinking about this today, and this is actually something that I always think about. It came back to my mind today, and that is, in the day and age we're living in right now, there's really no need for gatekeeping. And I'll tell you why. If you are making money, through a certain kind of a business, there's really no need for gatekeeping today because 99% of the people who come across information rarely act on the information. You can give people the blueprint as to this is how I do A, B, C, D, and E, and this is how I'm able to print millions. 99% of the people who hear that information will never act on that information. So there's really no need for gatekeeping in this day and age, unfortunately, right? So let's come back to my question. There has always been quite a lot of inventions that have actually helped mankind, right? But one of the major inventions that has helped mankind to propel into the future is actually what is called the printing press. Our ability to print books, our ability to print books, our ability to write paper. That was one of the biggest inventions that literally propelled mankind forward. Let me give an example. If you look at the societies and human beings from the let's say from the Southern Africa, or yeah, Southern Africa, because Northern Africa, it was a different case up until some people got involved. You'll find that if you look amongst the Xhosa nation, you look among the Zulu, in fact, any of the Nguni tribes, how many of them actually have their history not told by the colonizer or anyone else, but literally passed on from them, from generation to generation in a written form. Because right now you've got differing views as to who did what and how did they do it and so forth, right? I remember I was listening to people talking about history, talking about what was happening 2,000 years ago, especially around the Middle East and Europe, and I'm thinking to myself, what was happening in Africa, specifically Southern Africa, 2,000 years ago? Right? Do we have anything written except for paintings on caves and stuff like that, which do not really actually tell us much, right? But apart from that, we don't have something that is actually written down, like the Timbuktu manuscripts, right? Like all the books that you're finding in different. In fact, this is so sad because if you look at the Arab nation, right? They still write in Arabic. And I'm not talking the language Arabic, but I'm even the form of writing, right? When we write in any Nguni language, guess what we're doing? We're using the letters that we actually get from the West, right? If you look at the guys in Ethiopia, they still write in their own native, not just language, but native form of writing, for lack of a better word, right? So their language is Aramaic, but they also write in Aramaic, just like the guys in the Arabic guys, just like the guys in China, they write in Chinese, just like the guys in Russia, just like the guys in Japan, But for us, in most of Africa, specifically in the Southern Africa, we actually write using the letters of the alphabets that we actually got, from the West, right? So this tells you that a part and parcel of our development was actually hampered by our inability to document and to pass on information from generation to generation, right? So this has been something that has been very, very critical. So the invention of the printing press actually helped, humanity, because right now, if I'm a carpenter, I can actually detail my processes of how to build this and that, how to develop this and that, and that can pass on from generation to generation, right? And the next generation can only build on from the information that they actually got from the previous generation, right? This is how societies evolve. This is how societies develop, right? The failure to actually preserve information so that you can pass on to the next generation is actually what will cause other societies to actually be left behind, from other societies. And even when their development actually starts to take shape, it will actually be influenced, by other societies. It will never be something that is internal, right? So now I've said all of that to say, before the invention of the internet, we were actually communicating one to another, sharing information from generation to generation through written form, through books, right? So that is why cities that did not have books or libraries and cities that had the biggest libraries, you'll find that the development in those two cities, where there is big, massive libraries with large collections of encyclopedia, history, sociology, and all those things, you'll find that those societies actually, developed a lot faster as compared to those that did not have a library, right? So if you look at the townships and you find that there is one or no library, and the library that does exist there is maybe small with a very little collection, do not think that was actually a mistake. It was not a mistake, it was intentional, right? In fact, this was so intentional that even the kind of education that the Bantu people actually got was sort of watered down so that we don't pass information that is actually going to advance them, because so but that just is history, right? So now this is how we're passing on information. Libraries were very important. Libraries were very important, right? Now, when the internet was invented, right, many years ago, when it was invented, arguments are of it actually affect that it was actually invented by the military in the US, right? It became a game changer in terms of communication, right? So when we talk about the web, we're talking about, and I'm not going to go very, very deep, as this is not is more focused on the opportunities, right? Of this evolution, because with every evolution, with every invention, there's normally economic benefit, there's normally economic opportunities that actually come with it. And that is where my preoccupation is when it comes to this particular call, right? So we're not going to talk about who invented the internet and which year and how, we're not going to talk about that. But what we'll talk about is the fact that what we call Web 1, I think one of the most important things is, even if you look at it from the evolution of money, right? How money has been changing over the years, what you will realize is the fact that people were using the barter system many years ago, and right now people are no longer using the barter system, or in the main, or people have actually moved on many different times, or have evolved from that way of actually doing commerce, right? Into what we now call electronic money. But what you will find is that evolution, you'll find that there's still people today who are still practicing barter system in one way or the other. It might not be the main way of doing things, but you will still find people doing that in one shape or form. A friend of mine at some point wanted to sell a bike, like a motorbike, a scooter. And he put it on Gumtree saying that he wants to sell this motorbike and so forth. And somebody approached him and said, "Look, I've got a quiet bike. Do you mind if you swap?" right? So if they did that, that would have been a form of barter, right? But my friend actually wanted real cash, real currency that he can use for something else, right? So it tells you that this thing still does exist in one form or the other. So when you talk about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, even if we're talking about Web 4 or Web 5, it does not mean Web 1 does no longer exist. It does not mean that Web 1 has no use or there is no economic benefit that is still being derived from Web 1. It just means that this is what happened, but the evolution is now here, and these are the opportunities, right? You may still spot one or two opportunities within Web 1 still. Okay, so Web 1 was simply all about read only. This was a massive innovation from having to find a physical book. Like imagine if you go to your library in Motherwell and or any other township or any other small town or city, and you're looking for a specific book, but it's actually not there, right? You now have to get these people maybe to order this book from another part of the world, for another part of the country, and it might actually take time for you to receive this particular copy that you're actually looking for, that contains the particular information that you're looking for. So the invention of the internet therefore radically changed this, because now everything was accessible at our fingertips, right? With Web 1. Even though Web 1 was simply read only, but still, instead of me having to go physically to go to a book, to a library, now I can go to a website and actually go and read information, right? So, but this information was basically, it was all static websites or basic HTML, so there was no user interaction at all. You could only read what was there. You could only move, from one page to the other, from one tab to the other, but there was little you could actually do, right? In terms of interacting with the content that you were faced with, right? So this was all centralized, right? Meaning that the people who built the website, the people who built and put the information there, could actually put whatever that they want to put there without necessarily having any oversight as to is this content correct or incorrect or whatever the case is, right? You had to read the information and you then had to make your own decisions based on that, right? So Web 1 was basically read only, home pages. There was dedicated infrastructure. You could only view pages, and then obviously the opportunities that actually came with that is that people were able to register domains, right? People were able to register domains. People were able to put banner ads on websites and so forth. As a result, websites started generating money from there, because now if people can actually advertise their website even on paper, still on newspapers, on magazines and so forth, people could advertise their website. And as people come into the website to actually come and view, then they're able to read the stats in terms of how much people are actually coming into the website. Then they could use that data to actually sell for people to advertise, on those websites, right? Obviously, early on, this was not really the big thing in terms of generating, traffic on the internet, and as well as generating money from your website, right? So it was simply just for information sharing. But as Web 1 actually grew, there were opportunities were like domain registration, web hosting, web development, banner ads, and the early days of digital advertising, as I mentioned. And we also saw the birth of things like eBay and Amazon. Okay, now how did Amazon actually start? Jeff Bezos said, I'm actually going to sell books. Instead of people now going to the library to actually go and look for books or going to bookstores, now they can actually go online and order any book that they want, and it can be delivered into the comfort of their own home or their workplace and so forth. And that's all Amazon was in the beginning, right? And eBay, actually was the one who was a game changer, because it was more than just books that you could be able to buy on eBay, right? But as Amazon grew, it started from, we're selling books to we are selling whatever the hell we want to sell. You know, if we want to sell houses, we can, whatever we want to sell, we can now sell, right? So early content aggregators like your Yahoo, your AOL, and so forth, you know, those were the people who actually made money. Now, the interesting thing is that the people back then, you know, there's something similar in South Africa, but it's not necessarily, it's a trade name, or yeah, it's a trade name as opposed to it being, you know, a domain name, right? So we had the Bafana name. And when we were heading to 2010, guess what happened? You know, SAFA could not actually commercially use the word Bafana because somebody went and registered a trademark, probably not even costing them 5,000 to register that. And SAFA had to pay 5 million rand to actually get this name back. I remember there was a lot of uproar, you know, in the you know, in the world, in the news and so forth, but they had to pay, right? So business.com was sold for $350 million in 2007. This is just a domain, guys. It still happens even today. I think crypto.com was also sold for a couple of millions, right? So if you have got the capacity, there's nothing stopping you looking at what's happening in South Africa, what's happening in Africa, or your particular country where you are, and look at where the world is going. Oh, okay, it seems like the world is going this way. Probably somewhere, somehow, someone in the future will want a domain with this name or that name, and you know, you can actually go and register these domains, right? And you can basically sell them in the future for a lot of money. Sometimes people register a domain and it expires, they don't renew that domain. And guess what? Once it expires, people buy the domains on auction and then they actually sell them at a higher price. So I registered lonabofololo.com, and for some time, you know, the website was fine and so forth. And for some time, I just let it go. I was not updating and so forth. So the domain name actually expired and somebody bought that domain, right? And now they're trying to sell that domain, not to me, to anyone who wants to buy it at a much higher price. So this is how, you know, these are just some of the opportunities that were present in Web 1 and maybe are still present in Web 1. But what I want us to actually understand is the fact that with Web 1, or what became the .com era, is that if you look before pre-1991 or pre-1994, you look at how people actually became rich, how people became millionaires, how people became billionaires. It took them a lifetime to become billionaires, right? It took them a lifetime to become millionaires, right? Because of that particular era. But with the era of the internet, the time it took for people to become millionaires and billionaires became even shorter. Okay, because now all of a sudden the internet made the world a small place. It made it that even a person who's in America, you know, is almost like your next door neighbor in terms of your reach, your ability to reach them. Okay, so this was, if you look at your Yahoo, I mean, look at eBay, right? At its peak, it was valued at $80 billion, guys. This is just a website, right? If you look at Hotmail, it was valued at, or actually acquired for 20 billion by Microsoft. Look at Google, right? The peak valuation was actually 2 trillion. I'm not sure what the valuation is today, right? So, I mean, if you look at all of these things, I mean, there's so many of them. You look at what they actually valued at right now, right? Or what they were actually valued, right? But the people who actually made money in the internet, Web 1, were entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs will forever make money, right? Number 2, your VCs and angel investors. Because how the world of commerce works is, I might have an idea that I actually want to build and develop this particular watch. It's going to be different in this way or that way. My target market is actually going to be these people and that people, but then I don't have the money to build it, right? So I can then approach VCs and angel investors who can bet on my invention and help it to bring it to life. And if this thing succeeds, I become rich as an inventor. They also become rich as VCs, and angel investors, right? I mean, I'm sure we all know of, VCs and angel investors who are today billionaires because of having backed startups, from, when they were starting with the ideas and so forth. And then, of course, stock exchanges made a lot of money because now there was a lot of activity on the stock exchange. Even contractors, by contract, I'm not talking about, people who are building. I'm talking about people that were working with all of these people that are above in one way or the other, right? And as independent contractors, whether it's independent salespeople, whether it's independent whatever, those are the people who actually made money in Web 1, right? Now, Web 1 was just not enough, right? So human beings had to create Web 2. Now, what was different with Web 2? Remember, Web 1, you could only read content, right? But now in Web 2, things started to change, whereby now the content was a bit more dynamic, okay? There was a lot more user-generated content, right? So people find it fascinating that Facebook is free, WhatsApp is free, Instagram is free, and they don't understand why would anyone create these platforms for free and make all spend all this money in creating these particular platforms. Well, it's very simple, guys. Whenever something is free, chances are you are the customer, right? Not the other way around. Okay, so this then created rise with the rise of social media platforms, whereby now we can actually interact, we can add, we can create personas online, we can add, our names, our, anything about us, obviously started in universities and so forth, and then sort of like grew from there. So this then gave us your Facebook, your YouTube, your Twitter, your Android apps, and so forth, right? Now, what is most important here is that this new era of between 2004 and 2020, not only did it made the creation of billionaires and millionaires, even the time frame a lot shorter. Okay, but not only that, if you remember in Web 1, who was the winner? It was the entrepreneurs, it was the VCs, it was the angel investors, and everybody else in between. But now in Web 2, things started to change, whereby now, yes, the entrepreneurs are still winning. Yes, the VCs are still winning. But now, in addition to VCs and entrepreneurs and other people winning, now we have people that are called content creators, right? It's amazing how much in South Africa TikTok is actually widely used, but TikTok does not pay South Africans. This is quite crazy because as South Africans are generating content on TikTok, TikTok is making money, right? So I'm not too sure as to what is the actual reason why South Africans are actually not making money, but all of us, we know right now of people, who have built mega brands through social media, right? Even just your content creators as well as entrepreneurs were now able to reach more people for their products, for their services, utilizing the internet 2.0, which is now not only just read only, but you could read, you could write, and you could create social networks. This was made widely available with the rise of things like cloud computing. Data is still very, very centralized. As a result, for a long time, people did not know how actually Facebook makes money. People did not know how all these other tech giants are actually making money, right? But things like the US Parliament and so forth actually helped us to understand how these companies actually make money. How is it that Facebook is able to become a multi-billion-dollar company, but it does not charge us anything as the users of the platform, right? It is simply because, they are harvesting information, from us. They're harvesting, customer, they're able to create customer avatars, right? They're able to create profiles of customers, right? So, and then they use this data to actually sell on to advertisers. right? And of course, this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Okay, this is now Web 2.0. Now, apart from the entrepreneurs that we spoke about that were able to make money and so forth, I want us to talk also about other people that were able to make money, because there were also opportunities for ordinary people, just utilizing a simple cell phone, a simple, camera recorder, or whatever. People were able to become influencers, right? Or what we now call influencers. In Web3 and in crypto, we call them key opinion leaders, because that's what they really are. All right. So we saw social media platforms, as I said, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. The creator economy started to grow. The app economy started to grow. So data became the new oil. Right? Data became the new oil because it's easily transported. It's all via the internet. Right? There's no huge infrastructure needed. In fact, you could even, these companies are even, outsourcing, the data centers that they need, right? In fact, the crazy thing is that you and I, we're not maybe computer geniuses or whatever, but if we have the money and the infrastructure, actually, I met an old man in Cape Town, and he was telling me, this was in 2017, right? An old white Afrikaner man, and he was telling me how he's actually building data centers. So I'm telling him about Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin mining and so forth. And he's telling me about how he's building these data centers because there's a huge demand for this. And there's actually going to be even more demand. This was way before Web3, became what it is right now. It was way before the demand for compute, became what it is today, right? So this was quite interesting. So even today, guys, we can go and build a data center and actually get other people to hire the data center and simply, print money by simply creating the infrastructure, right? And on top of this, we saw also a rise of software as a service. What software as a service, right? Right now, I'm utilizing Zoom. Okay. What is Zoom? Zoom is a software. Okay. So I pay monthly to Zoom. It is software as a service, right? They are making the software available to me. You'll find that many of us who are using software one way or the other. Okay. So all of us are utilizing software as a service. This became like a very, very, big business. And there's actually quite a few other opportunities that are rising as a result of Web 2. There's banking as a service, there's wallet as a service, there's lots of other things that are actually coming into the fore as well. So now what I want us guys to actually have a look at, right, is if you were to, we're going to mention some of these names, but we're going to mention very few of them. But if you were to simply do a Google search and say, how much did YouTube pay to creators in the year 2023 or 2022 or 2021 or 2024, you will be mind blown as to how much YouTube is paying people, right? One of the things that fascinates me, again, I go back to what I said in the beginning, where I said, it's amazing how today we don't need to gatekeep because people are just so passive. People will not do anything with the information. There's a lot of people in South Africa who are influencers, right? They talk about business opportunities and so forth, but I am yet to find somebody who breaks it down as to how they are making money on YouTube, for example, right? Facebook is there as well, but YouTube actually pays more, right? I'm yet to find people who are actually breaking it down. They will tell you how to start a business, they'll tell you about this and that, but they won't necessarily tell you about, one of their income streams, which is YouTube. I'm yet to find. Maybe there is people, right? So the creator economy is one of the big economies right now. That is, and it's multifaceted, right? It's multifaceted. And I think probably in subsequent master classes, we will need to actually go deeper and just have a masterclass on YouTube. You know, there's people today who are creating huge faceless YouTube channels, guys, faceless YouTube channels, and you can have as many YouTube channels as you want, right? Get them, but then it's more than just creating. There's a lot that actually goes into that. Things like creating thumbnails, things like making sure that you're using the right SEO language, and so forth. You're optimizing, and also consistency, because that's one of the things that, even everyone who, I'm talking about myself, I started getting paid from YouTube 3 or 4 years ago, right? But because it was not something that was my main source of income, I never focused on that, right? But every now and then, I will get 1,000 rand from YouTube. And I think the most I've ever actually gotten paid was like 5,000 rands from YouTube, right? And this is not a lot of money, but there's people earning millions of dollars, right? On YouTube alone, guys, just on YouTube alone, there's people making lots of money even on Facebook, on all these other places, right? So let's come back. So the rise of Web 2.0 gave us access to global platforms. It made the world smaller. Right now, you will find a young boy sitting in Dobsonville or Alex or Motherwell or wherever, who's got access to the internet. You'll find that he's able to rap in the same way as Americans can rap. He's able to dress in the same way Americans can dress. He's able to understand the culture of America, even though he's sitting somewhere, because Americans are good at how to export their culture. Okay? This is something that we have to ask ourselves. Do we have a culture to export? And is it worth exporting? Is it income generating? Can it be commercialized, right? Because Americans are able to, if you look at things like rap and hip hop, right? It's just simply a culture. It's like what we have in South Africa. I think we call it stratamia, or the way the stratamia. What's the other word? We have stratamia, I'm not sure if it's the same thing, right? But we were not able to export that into, yes, I think those guys got a Grammys or something like that. But it's not something that if you go on the US radio show, you'll find just now and then playing a song by Puza Chemist, right? That's not what you're going to find, right? So, but what I'm saying is that, the world became smaller and people are now able to build businesses on a global scale, even if it's not content creation, right? Because now they're able to reach a wider audience, as opposed to just, their local audience, right? So anyone could create a YouTube channel, a blog, a Facebook page. Guys, I know people who are making lots of money with just simply blogs, and instantly have a global audience. The cost of starting a business, building a brand, and publishing content dropped to almost zero. Guys, anybody can create a brand these days because of social media. New ways to create money were created, right? So creators, and through YouTube ads, brand sponsorship, affiliate marketing. This is my favorite, right? Affiliate marketing, TikTok fun, etc. Right? Freelancers exploded through platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, Etsy, because now, guys, I had so much work done by people on Fiverr, Upwork, now even people with the house in Soweto or wherever now can actually make that and put it on Airbnb. It is all because of Web 2.0, right? And what did this create for companies like Airbnb, for TikTok, for YouTube, right? For Google, for Facebook? Again, it goes back to what I said. It created billionaires, right? And then, of course, this thing make things like I have a car, I don't have a job, or maybe I do have a job, but I'm looking for extra income, and I've got a car, it's in good condition. I can now put this car on, on Uber, and start driving people around on my spare time and be able to generate money, right? So, and then, people could create their own website on Shopify and start selling stuff. So education, information became abundant, right? Right now, with this thing called the smartphone, we have got the biggest library in the world known to mankind, through these phones, right? So again, the opposite of this, because now this information is available in abundance, right? It's everywhere. People are not so angry, hungry to consume anymore, because they are overwhelmed, by so much information that is coming. So they're not able to channel as to, this is the kind of information that I want, this is what I'm going to focus on, and so forth, right? Because right now, if you were to just go to the internet and say 10 top ways to make money on the internet, you're going to find them. If you say top 20 ways to make money on the internet, you're going to find them. If you say top 50 ways, so which one are you actually going to zoom into? Because you can't do 1,000 things at the very same time. You're not going to be effective, right? You can, but you're not going to be effective. So, so education became free, practically. You can literally learn anything you want to learn online. Anything you want to learn, you can learn online for free. So even things like specialized things like coding, people can create courses. You can find something that you are a specialist in, or you know a lot about than the average person. You can actually go and create a course, on that particular topic, monetize it, put it online, let people buy the course, right? So this created an abundant opportunities. Social and community building. This is now a very, very big thing, right? So people found their tribes based on their niche interests, gaming groups, crypto communities, activists, artists, and so forth, right? Crowdfunding platforms became a thing. Your Kickstarter, your GoFundMe, they allow people to raise money for projects and also emergencies, right? And then you remember what happened in Canada when the truckers were protesting or something to that effect, and they raised money through GoFundMe, and the government was actually able to actually go and stop that, because remember, Web 2.0 is all about centralization, right? Even though it makes accessibility a lot more open, but it is still usually centralized. It is still usually controlled by a central entity, right? This is why there was a need for something else, which we're going to talk about just now, right? So creativity became democratized, because now ordinary people became photographers, right? In fact, even journalists became obsolete, because right now anybody with a smartphone is literally a journalist. Something happens on the highway somewhere. What's the first thing people do? Take out your phone, start recording, sharing on social media. So now everybody became a journalist, right? Because we can now share things on the go as they happen, instead of having to wait for a narrative that's actually going to be curated by whoever controls certain media houses. Okay, so so this whole thing then became good in a way, because these big media giants, or social media giants, are actually being controlled, are actually being dictated to, and being bullied by governments, by other bigger corporations, and so forth, right? Because of course, if you have got a small online platform, right, and I am your biggest advertiser, 50% of your revenue comes from me as a company, I basically have got the upper hand to dictate as to what you can and what you cannot put on that particular, whether through soft means, or through coercion, whatever the case. But basically, I can control what you do allow on the platform and what you don't. And we saw a lot of this in 2021. You know what happened, right? So, writers, mediums, blogs, filmmakers, YouTube, TikTok, or musicians, everything became accessible. Gatekeepers became a thing of the past. Right now, artists can actually record and put their stuff on social media and other, Spotify and other platforms, without necessarily having to go through record labels who were, quote unquote, ripping off people, right? That's what people are alleging. So there were also massive investment opportunities for early investors, right? Even retail who actually bought on the stock exchange, right? But then, of course, who got the bigger cake? The guys were able to invest pre-IPO, and these were the rich people. These were your what they call in America sophisticated investors, right? These were your VCs. These were your angel investors. These were your, all these different kinds of people. And then, of course, later crypto and Web3 spin-off created a whole new, different way of doing things and wealth cycles, right? So Web2 turned millions of consumers into creators, entrepreneurs, investors, and micro business owners. Guys, Web2 is not gone. There's still opportunities within Web2, right? There's still opportunity within Web2. You just have to be consistent. For example, if you're a person, I know there's lots of people who love soccer in South Africa, right? Lots of people who love soccer. But how many people actually went as far as creating their own YouTube channels? Dedicated, for example, I mean, if you're a YouTube creator and you love soccer very, very much, you can have a specific channel speaking about Kaizer Chiefs, a specific channel for Sundowns, a specific channel for whatever team, right? One person, 3 or 4 different channels, and have one channel that's going to talk about soccer in general. That's going to talk about the MTN. Is it still MTN? MTN 8 Cup or Netbank 8 Cup, whatever. I'm not a soccer fan, right? So there's lots of ways of doing this, okay? So you can create long content. You can smash it up and put it into short content. Guys, there's lots of opportunities, right? As far as Web2 is concerned, right? Now, some of the real world example, Mr. Beast, I'm sure many of us actually know this guy. Started early in 2012, just making simple gaming videos as a teenager. And he also had his own fair struggles, right? There were very few views, no money, but kept posting for years, And but right now he owns one of YouTube's biggest channels with over 200 million subscribers, right? He earns tens of millions per year through ads, merchandise, right? And he started his own business brands. He started burgers and other, brand deals, right? So he built an empire worth over $1 billion from zero. No outside, no VCs, no nothing, right? By simply creating a brand on YouTube. It took time, but it's paying off big time. It's paying off big time. And here's one thing that I've also learned. Did you know that you can actually, there's VCs, guys, who can actually buy 70% of your revenue from your YouTube channel. They buy it, and then and then what they do is that once they buy it, they give you a lot of money up front, which helps you to build the platform further, to create more videos, get, a great edit and so forth. And then they share the revenue that you are generating from advertisers, right? So there's many opportunities out there, guys, if we just open our minds. And then we've got people like Sophia, right? I don't even know her, but obviously she's made a lot of money, built an online fashion empire from flipping. I saw this lady in China. I think she's making like a couple of millions of dollars in a week. Guys, you should see her stream. She does not even take 3 seconds in showing a particular item. So they're putting items in front of her. She just takes it and does like this and shifts it out and take another one, does like this, and she's saying something, obviously in Chinese. And she makes lots of money through this, right? So anyway, we've got Little Nas, who became a music icon. There's people from Korea, guys. I mean, Kylie Jenner, right? Built $1 billion brand, $1 billion brand, simply by utilizing social media. She utilized, Instagram in the main. Right now, people apply, companies apply to have a post about their whatever product that they want them to post about, and then she makes a lot of money, right? So a lot of people, make money, guys, in different ways. I just want to go to the next one. So in summary, gatekeepers fell away. Power shifted to individuals, right? If you had Wi-Fi and the phone and a little bit of creativity, sometimes a bit of madness, you have a real shot of creating money online, okay? These are just some of the winners in Web2. So if you notice the values in Web 2 and the values in Web 1, the values in Web 2 are staggering because it is all, it's growth from one level to the next, right? And when you see Meta valued at $1.1 trillion, understand that this means so many millionaires were created, so many billionaires were created, whether they are servicing the company or whether they are creators on the company, but it's an entire ecosystem that got created. Same as with YouTube, same as with Twitter, same as with Airbnb, Spotify, Uber, Instagram, Snapshot, Zoom, and TikTok, right? So again, who won? Still, entrepreneurs, VCs, brokers, stock exchanges, and all that, plus creators as well. So the question you might ask, is it too late for me to become a creator now? No, it's not, right? You just have to be patient. You just have to be consistent. That's all it takes, right? Um, in fact, if there's one thing that separates people who actually win in this day and age, is those who are consistent versus those who try things out, right? 90% will hear about something and be interested, but you'll get maybe 20% that's going to be interested and that's going to try it out. You'll get 5% that's actually going to be consistent. So the challenges that were faced in Web 2 obviously were centralized, right? These people were dictated to. Data privacy, right? You put in your children's information there and so forth. People are buying this kind of privacy, right? People are hacking and selling people's information that they get on these platforms on the dark web. you know you'll be amazed at how much information about you is actually available on the internet, right? So it came with opportunities. It is also quite a creepy world, right? There's a lot that is happening as well behind this, and so we need to be a little more savvy and smart about the content that we are putting out on the internet, right? So then comes Web3. Guys, any thoughts, any questions? Share in the comment section. What are your thoughts? What do you wish you knew before regarding Web 2? So as you can see, Web 2 actually had more opportunities for ordinary people as opposed to Web 1. Okay, the benefit for ordinary people in Web 1 is that it made information accessible. But Web 2 did not only make information accessible, but it made it possible for people to build brands, become social media influencers, become creators, and be able to generate money online. I remember in 2010, or actually 2009, when I was working, people were talking about making money online. You need to, start making money online. I got frustrated because I was like, how? And there was nobody to tell me, how do you make money online? Everybody say, make money. What does that mean? What does it mean? Make money online. Yes, but what does it mean? I really got frustrated because there wasn't a lot of information out there, and I so wanted to make money online. You know, but even today, there's still people who don't know what does that mean. Make money online. What does that mean? Right? There's so many opportunities, guys, to make money online. Right? I want to see if there is any comments or question. If only I can see my. Any question, guys? Comments? Shall we continue? Shall we call it a day? You guys tired? Like me? You guys finding value? Can you guys access the webinar chat? Okay, I'm trying to see if I can enable reactions, unmute themselves. Okay, that's panelist attendees to. Okay, so maybe, okay, let's leave that for. You can continue, we are learning. Anonymous attendee says no. I don't know, no to what. I'm not sure no to which one attendee, anonymous attendee. Somebody says yes, we're finding knowledge. Thanks for the information. No question for now. Just amazed by the information. We're learning. Curious. All right, so let's continue to Web3. So just a summary of what we just spoke about. Great information. So Web 1 was read-only, centralized by publishers. Monetizations was only through ads and commerce. We've got examples. Web 2 was read and write. It was centralized by big tech. Monetization options were ads, commerce, and then examples of Facebook and so forth, right? Web3, it became read plus write plus own. So the difference with Web3 is that now you can own stuff, right? In terms of control, it became a lot more decentralized through the advent of blockchain technology. Monetization, in addition to ads and commerce, now you've got tokens, you've got NFTs, you've got decentralized autonomous organizations, you've got DeFi. Yeah, there's so much. You've got airdrops, there's so many different things. Now, examples, there's just so many to mention, but for example, things like Ethereum, Solana, OpenSea, Uniswap, and so many different others, right? Web3 platforms. Okay. Now, so in Web3, now all of a sudden, user can be able to own their data, right? Users can be able to own digital assets, right? Users can participate directly in governance, like on voting structures and making decisions on different platforms that do allow for such, right? And even those that don't allow for such, participants can make their voices heard through social media, right? On different community groups and so forth, right? So in the main, in Web3, there is no central company owning the platform blockchain base. There is, of course, those that were created by a company, but then, relinquish direct ownership and control, and allow people to do as they please, right? Based on whatever the platform is about. So in summary, Web3 it moves from you are the product to you are the owner. Now you can actually own stuff, right? There is social media platforms based on Web3. They're just not getting the traction yet, but they are there, right? Web3 actually presents a whole lot more than what we saw in Web 2, right? Because now we're talking about the Internet of Things, right? We're talking about edge computing. We're talking about data being decentralized. We're talking about a live video on the blockchain, right? We're talking about behavioral engagement and management, right? We're talking about semantic search. We're talking about behavioral advertising. So there's just a lot, right? That basically comes with the with Web3, right? So now early opportunities in Web3. Okay, so what became a game changer in Web3 as opposed to Web3 is the invention of blockchain technology, because now it made it possible for control to be decentralized and for actually people to own their stuff. Okay, we're going to talk more about this as we continue. Oh my Lord, my time is finished. Okay, so create entrepreneurs again, guys. Like I said, entrepreneurs will always win, whether it's Web 1 or Web 7. Okay, it's something that we have to learn, entrepreneurship, right? So entrepreneurs can now create dApps that can cut out the middleman, finance, whether they are doing so in the finance field or their art, gaming, social media, and so forth, right? People can simply launch tokens to raise money without needing VCs. That is how Binance was financed. Binance was financed, through the ICO stage, right? NFT projects. Now we can build, art, gaming, membership models. I remember Travis Scott held one of the biggest concerts in the world, right? This concert had over 20 million people. Now, there is no arena in the world that can hold 20 million people, right? Travis Scott was filling out every arena he was actually doing. And then he decided, you know what? Let's rather make a concert in the metaverse. Now, the nice thing about this is that people can be in the deep, darkest rural areas. If they've got the internet, they've got smartphones, they were able to attend the concert, right? Without necessarily having to transport themselves to a specific venue, maybe in a specific country, right? So the metaverse became a game changer, right? And you could buy an NFT that then gave you access, to this metaverse where you can attend concert and so forth. It's amazing that the metaverse has not really gotten the traction it actually should, as I believe it's a serious game changer. Because now all of it, guys, I saw companies, big companies, building their own metaverse, or finding a popular metaverse and buying land, building buildings there, and so forth, right? So when we saw what is still going to come in the metaverse, it's amazing. For example, right now we're talking through Zoom, right? There's only so much you can do through Zoom, but with the metaverse, especially now with these virtual reality goggles and so forth, guys, we can sit. I'm sitting here, you're sitting wherever you are, and we can actually sit as if we're sitting in a boardroom, right? And I can actually come and talk to you in in the conference setting, but I can actually ask you a question directly, as if I'm standing in front of you, right? It's amazing how this thing works, because now, if you look at Avatar, and I don't know, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but if you look at the movies like Avatar and so forth, it shows you what is actually coming. Very, very interesting. It shows you, because the metaverse is exactly like Avatar, Anyway, let me see if I think there's a question. That's great to hear, right? So now the investors obviously become early stage, crypto projects, DeFi protocols, NFT collections. Guys, I'm gonna rush this because I was supposed to have another call at 7. I'm not even sure if I should stop this and then we come back and we do another session just on Web3, because there's a lot to cover. We're going to talk about how the world is getting tokenized, because right now, everything, every asset, is going to be tokenized, right? Right now, let's say you and I, I'm getting ahead of myself, right? But I'm thinking that's actually a good idea, that we stop this, and then we'll come back maybe next week, Sunday, we'll announce, and then we do Web3 and go more in depth into Web3, right? Because right now, what's going to happen, guys, you will find that, let's say you and I, or we are a group of individuals. We could even be in all over the world, right? Different parts of the world, but we found each other on car enthusiast groups, right? And let's say, for example, there is a one-of-one Lamborghini. I alone cannot afford it. You alone cannot afford it. The next person cannot afford it, right? But we know a lot of people who may want to own this Lamborghini, even if they own a fraction of this Lamborghini, because we know because it's one of one, it's special in this way and that way, therefore it's going to appreciate in value over time, right? There's lots of cars that do appreciate in value over time. There's actually over $18 trillion that is locked in collectibles, whether it's art, painting, or whether it's collectibles, cars, and so forth. And these things do appreciate in value. You'll find that the rich of the rich actually put some of their money in these things. I know somebody in Cape Town who has got a painting that's worth 18 million rands, is on the wall, a painting, right? So there's somebody who owns a car museum, with cars that are worth lots and lots of money. And you can actually own a car that is sitting in a museum for people to go and see, but we tokenize the ownership of that car. We have got 100 people buy that car, 1,000 people buy that car, 2,000 people or 3 people buy that car. And we tokenize the ownership of that car. And everything is tracked on the blockchain. Nobody can cheat anyone, right? If I want to sell my portion, I can sell it to whoever who wants to sell it, right? There can even be like a bidding kind of a system, just like they do in NFT marketplaces, right? So there's so many things that are available in Web3 that we're going to talk about in the next session, right? We're going to talk about some of the real world assets that are being tokenized in South Africa. Because right here in South Africa, there's projects, whether it's real estate, whether it's businesses that are actually being tokenized, where you can buy a share in a mine, you can buy a share in a piece of real estate, right? In a project, and the nice thing about this thing is that you can actually buy, real world assets that are tokenized anywhere in the world. Dubai is moving very heavily as far as this is concerned, making accessible their real estate to even people who don't have the millions that is actually required to invest into Dubai real estate, right? So we're going to share all of this information in the next call. I think it's only fair that we don't rush this, but rather have a call next week, Sunday, again, same time, same place. We will share the information whereby it's purely going to be on Web3. And I know most people that are on this call, that's what they actually came here for. But I'm sure you found value even with the advent of Web 1 and Web 2. I think let's do that. I'm going to stop the recording now. And then we're going to continue next week, Sunday. I do have a call right now in the next 1 minute. I'm just going to take a 60-second break. This call is about a Web3 project that I am doing, right? That I have found that I'm doing. It's about the convergence of Web3 and AI. Something that I'm doing, it's anyway. So I'm gonna share the link on the group that I normally share these calls. So thank you so much, guys. Have yourself a great evening. We shall see each other next week, Sunday. Let's allocate a bit more time so we can go in depth into Web3 and the opportunities that Web3 presents. Thank you so much, guys, and God